Throughout the semester, I have analyzed Lindor truffles, and in case you haven't had what I'm sure is the privilege of listening to me ramble about them, I'd like to start by providing some background. Lindor truffles are small balls of chocolate that have a hard but smooth exterior chocolate shell, and then once you break into that, there's a smooth, luscious center. They come in a lot of different flavors, and in 2019, they were the most popular Valentine's Day candy. They're made by the company Lindt and Sprigoli, and they're on the expensive side of things, as the bag of 50 truffles that I've been analyzing costs you a little bit over $32. For clarity's sake, this is what the bag looks like. We have the front side, a list of flavors on the left, nutritional facts, and on the back there's a promising message along with some stuff about the production process. Now, this presentation is going to provide a brief analysis on certain aspects of the rhetorical nature of Lindor truffles. So first, I'm going to discuss message pacing using probes provided by Chapter 6. Second, I'm going to discuss voice, highlighting some of the important concepts that are listed in Chapter 7. Third, I'll discuss ultimate terms, which are covered by Chapter 8. And finally, I'll provide a synopsis of my findings, in addition to bringing attention to newsworthy implications that I uncovered through my analysis. With that, I'll begin by examining message structure, which is started in Chapter 6. Chapter 6 gives critics some tools to examine the structure of artifacts, and it gives 3 ways to do so. I chose to look at message pacing in particular, which is essentially focusing on the order in which ideas are presented, and it has 2 sides to it. First, on top of the order being presented, you want to look at what's said first versus what's said last, and how changing those things changes your perception of the artifact. Second, I contemplated the artifact's complex and controversial ideas by looking at when they were first presented, what preceded and followed that information, in addition to how those impacted the audience's reception of the artifact itself. So, what I found most interesting was the placement and location of arguments that were based off of varying levels of complexities, and I found that to be incredibly revealing. So first, the simplest information, which is basically telling that the bag has 5 assorted flavors, which was covered on the front and left side of the bag, was really simple. Additionally, the most comforting information was the soothing message on the back of what consumers can expect after eating one of the truffles, and that was placed at the top of the back side of the packaging. All of this information is in white, larger font that is really easy to read off of the gold, shiny background. Whereas the most complex information, namely the nutrition facts, was placed on the right side of the bag, and additionally the most controversial information, uniquely like the farming and the production process in addition to sustainability for Lindt and Sprigoli, was placed on the bottom of the back side of the packaging. The information for these 2 things was typed in small black font that makes it hard to read. Additionally, most consumers are right-handed, so if they pick up the bag, they will turn it this way rather than turning it this way, which means they're more likely to see the front and left side, which is really simple, than seeing the back and right side. Now, this produces different effects for different audiences. So, for example, if you are an audience member who's in a hurry with shopping, but you're hungry for something food-related or luxurious, then you'll see the basic info on the front and left side of the package, and that might be enough for you to just throw it in your cart. But if the complex ideas were in these areas, then that type of audience might not even give the product a second look. But audiences that do care about things such as this will have to wade through the superficial, the positive information that is very simple before they can actually find the info they're looking for, which might drop their guard and make them more likely to make a purchase in the first place, even if they find information that they don't particularly enjoy. Now that we've discussed pacing, I want to introduce a change of pace so that we can talk about the concepts provided by Chapter 7. The second point of my analysis centers around syntax and imagery, specifically the section of the textbook that talks about voice. Now, in the textbook, Gibson provides a 3-section system for classifying voices of artifacts, and I found that Lindor truffles did not actually become dominated by one of the 3 voices, but rather used them frequently in different locations. So first, let's talk about the stuffy style, which is characterized as the formal usage, as well as using complex language and passive voice. I saw this voice happening in the nutrition facts section with hard to read ingredients and hard to understand different nutritional facts. The tough style, which is defined as being factual, lacking emotion, and using really short phrases, was mostly used on the front and left side of the packaging related to the assorted list of flavors. And the sweet style that was using social and emotional tactics that focus on action and advice, and most importantly, you as the consumer, I saw being used most frequently on the back of the packaging. Now, the sweet style was using really positive descriptions of the unique production process and promising high quality candy made by master chocolatiers, whereas the tough style was mostly focused on barely factual information. So, additionally, the three styles were bunched and separated at different locations. The tough style was on the front and left side of the packaging, the stuffy was on the right side of the packaging, and the sweet style was on the back of the packaging. And I think that this is interesting because each one of the three voice styles calls out to a different type of audience. The tough style calls out to that audience that is in a hurry, that needs the basic facts about the product so that they can get on with their day. The stuffy style is for the people who need the more complex information that comes from the nutrition facts side of things. And then the sweet style is for those who want to feel safe and secure in their purchase and know that they'll be satisfied the moment that they take a bite into one of these truffles. So now I'm going to stop talking about voice, but continue to use my own voice to talk about my third point, which is looking at Chapter 8. Specifically, we're going to parse the language used by Lindor Truffles in order to figure out what values that it communicates. Now, a lexicon is essentially verbal shorthand that communicates different information to audiences, groups, and individuals. And oftentimes, they communicate lots of information in a single word or phrase. And there are two terms. There's ultimate terms, and then there are code words. And my artifact mostly uses ultimate terms, and I know that it didn't use code terms, which are extremely specific to different audiences, because I handed the product to my 9-year-old brother, and he seemed to get pretty much every message. I found that this product was dominated by universal terms that were God terms, which are the universal type of term that is good, as juxtaposed to the devil terms, which are universal terms that are bad. Now, these apply for most, if not all, audiences, despite their differences, which is why they're so universal, even though they're stating complex ideas. So, Lindor talked about on their process of making their chocolate finest cocoa, best ingredients, and finishing with perfection. And then when they described the relationship between the makers of the chocolate to the chocolate itself, it was made by master chocolatiers with passion and love for chocolate. These are God terms because they are universally taken as positive. Nobody expects you to hear words like passion and love and be upset at those words. But interestingly, I didn't really find any usage of devil terms in my artifact other than in the nutrition facts section where it was talking about cholesterol, trans fat, and sugar, which our culture has essentially accepted are all really bad things. Now, what values are communicated by this language? I essentially found 3, and they all stem from the opening phrase, we ought to enjoy things that are 1, made by people that are experienced rather than made by people new to the industry, 2, that are unique and special but not typical of the market, and 3, we ought not accept anything that is less than the very best. So finally, I want to discuss what happens when we accept the messages that are coming from Lindor Truffles. So, what is the big deal exactly? And what happens, and what are the implications of balls of chocolate? I found 2. First is that by using sweet talk and God terms, Lindor Truffles and Linton Sprigoli are leading consumers to believe that they can be trusted and that they are looking out for the consumer. Lindor Truffles don't tell you that their product is good for everyone. They say that you as the individual consumer are going to benefit from eating this product. And by focusing so much on positivity, we contribute to the cultural narrative that we ought to accept positivity rather than question the narratives that are being presented. Second, I found that because of the lack of complexity and the prioritization of the simple, it reaffirms the principle that ignorance is bliss. And thus, that means that we are less likely to again question the narratives that are given to us if we are not really given any information that sparks an additional thought. So in conclusion, I analyzed Lindor Truffles from 3 perspectives. First, I used message pacing to uncover that by prioritizing the simple, we call out to busy audiences. Second of all, I looked at using stylistic voices and how stuffy for nutritional facts, sweet for promising satisfaction, and tough voice for giving information. And lastly, we discussed how ultimate terms encourage consumers to accept passion and perfection rather than imperfection and indifference. This bag of Lindor truffles is essentially similar to a Lindor truffle in and of itself. It begins with simple surface level information, and as that melts away into getting more comforting messages and quality assurances at the core, Lindor truffles essentially asks consumers the following question: what's not to love? And as they employ tools and tactics like the one that I've analyzed, audiences walk away with the answer: nothing is not to love.